Hi there! You're about to listen to a vintage episode of the Under the Microscope podcast. While the content is still as relevant and as interesting as when it was recorded, our webpage has changed. You can now find us at thesciencetalk.com/real-scientist-nano. Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account. Hi everyone. Today we have with us Burak Guzelturk, who is an assistant physicist at the Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago, Illinois. Hi Burak, how are you?
Hi Pranoti, thank you so much, doing good. And thanks for this opportunity for in general, for bringing this business to life. And it's
Thank
very
you.
cool
Glad
effort.
you enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you. So let's dig in. Let's start by understanding your scientific career. You mentioned in the short podcast that you are doing science not in your home country or not. You're an international scientist here. So please tell us about your career journey so far.
Yeah, definitely. I was born in Turkey on the west coast across Greece on the Aegean Sea side. And it's a third biggest city, Izmir. Then I went to Ankara, the capital, for my undergraduate studies. Then actually I decided to stay there for my master's and PhD as well. So it was the same university for 11 years. So
Oh wow!
It was pretty long
You really
time.
like the university. Yeah, I see that.
I liked the environment. Yeah, it was pretty nice. So I studied electrical engineering, electrical and electronics engineering, more the precise term, for the whole time. And in very early, like my first year, I was taking Physics 101 and Physics 102 classes. And the professors were very well-known people in nanoscience in Turkey. Like they were pretty much the leaders in that community. And like during course breaks, we were chatting about the research, how fun it is, and so on and so forth. And I realized like I got pretty much pumped up about nanoscience. I started reading about it. And then I approached them. I said, okay, may I come and work in your labs and learn more about it? And they say, yeah, fine, come and join. Particularly, I started working in the lab by my third year, my junior year. And by next year, I was almost like close to a publication. I said, okay, this is really fun. I loved it. Like there were pretty experienced people in the lab and helping me, and I was doing also some individual project. It was really fun. I said, okay, yeah, I'm gonna work on this more. So I'm gonna learn this more. Then I did my master's and PhD in the same group in Turkey. It was very productive, very fun time. We were like 12, 13 people, students in the same office, very quantum confined. It was a very packed office, but very fun place to be. A lot of teamwork. So some people were doing some part of the project, some others, and then we were bringing the different pieces of the puzzle together. It was very productive time, to be honest. Like we published so many papers. And we were mainly doing these tiny nanocrystals of cadmium selenide and their derivatives. Now people are using them in TVs as backlight units, like Samsung, Sony. They have these QLEDs, right?
The QLEDs, is that what you're
QLEDs, exactly.
right?
So we were working on the Q of that LEDs.
Okay.
And when I started my master's PhD back in 2009, I never dreamed that quantum dots will make it into market within. I think they made it into market by 2016 or so. So Yeah, I was telling to my mom that, okay, I'm working on some materials that are going to make into the real life maybe in 25 years. So don't expect anything from me in the meantime.
I'm still doing basic research, is what they call it, not a more away from the lab, away from the application, away from the industry.
Yeah, that's my thought. But then things escalated fast. Like efficiencies were like 30%, 40% for radiative efficiencies back in 2009. And it was like already almost 95% by 2013. And things developed very
Nice.
quickly. Like, okay, we didn't do much, but there's a huge community all around the world who did like a tremendous progress. And we were maybe a small part of it. And yeah, then I also did some I did some solar cells using quantum dots, some LEDs, some lasers. I got more interested into lasers towards the end of my PhD. I focused most on doing lasers because it was more challenging and
Right.
less people do it.
Right.
There were problems and like some technical problems. I addressed some of them, and there were some cool results coming out. And then my PhD started to like the end of my PhD approached. And that's like a interesting time because until you come to the end of your PhD, you don't think about it much, but that time comes and it's like a blip. Then, okay, what am I gonna do?
What do I want in my life? Go on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I spent this 6, 7 years, and now what am I gonna do with it? Like, yeah, it's like some philosophical and you need to think maybe some strategically, or I don't know. It was a hard time.
Right.
I decided to took the hard path, and because I realized I'm really into the fundamentals of this stuff, like why an excited carrier is getting lost instead of being emitted, so that device efficiency is low. I really don't care too much about the device efficiency, maybe, but I really care what happens to that excited state. Like, what happened to it?
Right.
So I decided to go more in a group to do my postdoc as to understand these fundamentals of microscopic mechanisms, what's going on. Then I joined this group at Stanford University who does pretty fancy stuff. So I never heard it before, actually, in my PhD. They were doing ultra-fast structural measurements. So like people do XRD, X-ray diffraction. They get the structure of the material. But this group was doing ultra-fast XRD, meaning that they were shining light on the material, then using a pulsed X-rays, and then they were synchronizing the laser and X-ray with respect to each other, and then looking at this excited state from the structure point of view. How does the atoms and phonons are being induced by this excitation? And it provides a new perspective, because when you think about materials, okay, people will always talk about electrons and etc., but they all are in this lattice of atoms, right? So these vibrations of these things and their defects, the missing an atom, a vacancy, or some kind of any type of imperfection is potentially a loss mechanism. So then it's important to understand the atomic perspective on these processes. I said, okay, it's very interesting. I want to join this group, and I went there. I would say it's like a second PhD for me, because at the end of your PhD, you have a thesis, you have a book, right? You feel a little bit entitled. You say, okay, I wrote like 150 pages on something, and I'm a kind of an expert on something, not a big expert, but
I know everything now. Not
yeah,
really.
not everything, but a little bit of on something.
Right.
But then in this group, I was the least knowledgeable person to start with on that
Starting
business.
from square one then.
Yeah, square one, actually. Yeah, back to square one. That was a bit of a challenge the first year of my postdoc. It's like doing a new PhD, but now with the mindset of
A postdoc.
yeah. So it was a bit of a challenge at the beginning, but I then picked up. I definitely lost my momentum like for a year, because I was running in terms of like doing research, publishing papers, but at the first year or postdoc, I need to learn to walk as a baby.
Right.
But then over time I picked up. I get a little bit momentum, and I started really enjoying it. And then that's actually how I end up the job here at Argonne. I started doing a lot of beam times at Stanford and some other labs, because it's really hard to make those experiments in university labs. You really need like facilities like synchrotrons, or in Europe, for example, there is ESRF, and there's even more fancier capabilities like XFEL, X-ray free electron lasers, which are again X-ray lasers, but with much finer time resolution. It's like 100 femtoseconds, so it's
Right.
10 to the minus 15 seconds. Like it, and synchrotrons are on the order of picosecond time range, so it's still good, but a little bit worse in resolution. But anyway, so I get into this business, learned a lot, and then decided to continue in this area.
Okay.
Yeah, and now I'm at APS, the synchrotron advanced photon source, and now doing my own research plus helping user experiments.
Okay.
Times.
Okay, that's quite a journey you've had. That's really, really cool. So you did speak a little bit about your current research, well, quite a bit about your current research in the short podcast. But my question to you is, where does it fit in this big picture of materials and nanoscience? Because the materials and nanoscience field is quite broad. So where does your work fit in?
It fits mostly in characterization and maybe advanced characterization, not a day-to-day simple characterization.
Not the everyday lab characterization. No, it's a special one.
It's a special, more advanced characterization.
Right.
And maybe let's say you got stuck, you hit the wall, you don't really understand something, and maybe then these methods are way to go to get more insights into your materials. And okay, for example, you have an LED, you work very hard to get 15% efficiency, but theoretical limit is 25%, and you're wondering why that I'm losing additional 10%, and how can I fix it? Maybe then it might worth to consider more like these advanced techniques to maybe understand more about these drive new insights into the atomic structure, and maybe then improve the materials later using that insights.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. I think that's very, very important, and I'm really curious. How do you see the dance of the electrons? What you mentioned in the short podcast. So, Burak, it sounds to me that so far you have been involved in quite a lot of interesting research projects. I mean, you were working on the QLEDs technologies that we are getting in our TVs now. And also now, I'm sure your current research projects are also really exciting. So my next question to you, I know this is a difficult one. I know this before asking this, but if you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one, can you do that and explain it to us in super simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
Yeah, that's definitely a difficult question.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to pick a recent work of ours. It was a pretty big collaboration. I think the paper had 27 or 29 people. Like, it was a big effort.
Oh my God, yeah, that's a lot of people.
A lot of people. It got published recently, earlier this year. So that work was pretty cool. I really enjoyed doing that. And we were actually 4 people leading it. So we were 4 equal first authors in that paper.
Wow, big project.
2 grad students from Berkeley, Dipti, John, and another postdoc from Stanford, Ben Kotz. What we did is we, again, similar idea, shine light to a quantum dot. And this light is a pulse laser light. So there's a waiting time between laser pulses. So we create this excited state, then we wait it to relax. During that time, we come with actually now with electrons. It's like a TEM, but in time result mode. So we do TEM in an ultra fast fashion.
Oh, wow.
It's called ultra fast electron diffraction. It's a pretty cool technique. So what we learned from that experiment is that when we excite these quantum dots that are also pretty much used in these TV technologies, they were very efficient, like very close to 100% efficiency, but they're efficient when you pump them very gently. So that's the trick. Like in TVs and so on and so forth, generally they're excited little. But in applications like lasers or more advanced applications like solid state lightning, like lightning the rods and etc., you need more light and you need to pump them hard. And when you start pumping them hard, they start to become more inefficient. Because you have more than one excited state within this small volume of the quantum dot, and they interact with each other and they generally annihilate each other. One of them loses the energy. It's called this Auger process. Electron is either kicked out in the higher levels, but then it relaxes quickly and it loses energy to the lattice, so it heats up. So we basically wanted to see this heating up process, because when people talk about this Auger, they see from photoluminescence of the sample. They see like photons coming faster, so on and so forth. But it was very hard to see the nanocrystal being heated because of this event. We basically saw it. So nanocrystals heats up on the same time scales that people shown or predicted, hundreds of picoseconds. But then the more interesting thing that to our observation was that when we excited with a much higher energy photon, like a UV photon, then we observed that the nanocrystal is heating up, plus there are some weird deformations happening. We don't fully understand what those deformations are, but we know that they're happening at the very small length scale, meaning that, okay, this is cadmium atom, this is sulfur atom, and this is like the smallest bond in that material, and it's something like 3 angstrom. It's very small, 0.3 nanometer. And that bond was disordered significantly. So meaning that those carriers are localizing to a very small distance around an atom and making the position of the atom a little bit deformed, so deforming the unit cell. And that means actually these electrons or holes, basically these electronic carriers, are getting localized, getting trapped, and deforming the structure. And we saw it's significantly more happening with UV light. So, and then we made some theoretical estimates and so on and so forth. We think that these hot carriers means excited electron hole pairs with excess kinetic energy than the band. So because you excite with a high energy photon, those hot carriers can get trapped easier than I would say cold carriers or like bandage excitations. And that was I think a pretty cool observation. I think it could have implications on LEDs and lasers. Yeah, I was talking to actually some industry people. They said they read the paper and it's pretty interesting. It says they said maybe it explains some of those observations they're seeing. Like the performance of the LEDs goes down if you pump them harder and harder, more current you drive them. So it's in a way related. So I think, yeah, I find it that a fundamental information, but potential applications to solve maybe some problems in real devices. I think it was a big effort. Like we get samples from Chicago, Berkeley, Stanford, and the experiment was a beam time at SLAC National Lab, and we're like a team of 5-6 people doing the experiment over like 24 hours per 5-6 days. It was pretty demanding experiment, and yeah, and then theory group supporting us with some calculations. Anyway, it was a pretty big effort. Yeah, it took like 2 years to get everything wrapped up and submit the paper.
Nice. Just to submit the paper, then comes the review process and all of that.
Yeah, review process was fast. It took like just 3 months or so. It was fast.
That's really cool.
We were lucky. Yeah, we were lucky.
It's done. We are done now. This needs to go out in the world. Our work needs to go out in the world. But that's really cool. I can understand why you picked this as one of the projects that you're proud of, because it is it's also interesting from the scientific perspective, of course, very, very interesting, but also the teamwork, the diverse teamwork that goes into doing such beautiful science. It's very important to talk about. So that's really cool. I'm glad, and I hope you will talk more about it, because now the paper is published, so you can talk about it when you're taking over the account.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Burak, at least from the way you explain the science, I think you really like the research aspect of being a scientist. But other than that, what else do you like about being a scientist, other than the research, like going in the lab and doing the work? What else?
Okay, so I think I like several different bits of this as well.
Please elaborate.
Like talking to other scientists is very nice, and like I find it very refreshing to also talk with people who are not in my immediate field, because learning about challenges of different fields and different areas, different materials, whatever you can think of, like it's very interesting that what I'm doing is not the only thing in the world, and that's first. And the second is there are different approaches, like some communities follow a totally different approach, for example, than what my community or what I'm doing in my research. And then I get inspired by that, which is very important in science and in life, to see differences.
Right.
And I like that a lot. The other thing is related to research is I like reading papers, like it's like a hobby. I just go to like nano letters every other day in ACS, nano, nature, nano, whatever. Like I keep, what new paper came, and just skim through the paper, and
Right.
yeah, and also follow like, okay, this group keep publishing very cool papers. Yeah, like what's gonna be the next thing or whatever.
You're the perfect scientist. I would say you're the perfect scientist. You're doing what you should be doing and what you enjoy doing. So that's really good. You're a perfect scientist, I would say.
I
Because you
don't
also
know,
enjoy reading
thank
the
you.
papers. It's really nice. Nice to know. So, Burak, what advice would you give to the researchers or students, let's say, who are starting out today? You have accumulated quite a lot of experiences and learnings from all these years of being a scientist. So, if you were to go back in time, what advice would you give yourself, or what advice would you give to the students who are starting out today?
Yeah, I think one advice that I got back in the time was that maybe life is also like that, but research is definitely like that. You put effort, you put effort, you put effort, nothing comes out, nothing comes out, nothing comes out. You put more effort, nothing comes out, but then all of a sudden it starts coming out. So there
Right.
is both a learning curve plus it's like a diode. Like you apply voltage, no current, increase the
Right.
voltage, no current, and all of a sudden a lot of current. Like you turn it on, it's now
Right.
like a short circuited, right?
Right.
So research and life is a bit like that. You need to be, I think one is to be a bit more, or be persistent, keep trying. Things definitely fail first, second, third, fourth time, maybe fifth time, maybe sixth time. So I don't know the count. So it can happen a lot. Sometimes you're lucky, maybe sometimes you get it on the first time, but one
Right.
must know that it must be pretty darn good luck.
Right. Yeah.
It takes
True.
a lot of time, and
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely one thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I always have it, like even whatever you become a professor or whatever, it's still there, like because you don't do the same thing over and over and over again. You keep changing the question,
Mm-hmm.
the material, whatever.
Right.
It's dynamic, right? It's always changing. Then
Right.
you don't go to square one, but you go to square x minus one or x minus three or whatever.
Exactly. Yes.
So, and you
Definitely.
need to be then follow the same, in a way, not the same recipe, but a similar recipe of like try different things. And that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is what I learned also through my scientific adventure, I will say there are different approaches to the same problems, definitely. Like with an engineering student, my thinking and my looking at the problem was different. Now it's different. And because I now interacted with more people, so more papers, so more experiments,
Mm-hmm.
talk with more people, now I have more experience that I can apply. But it's not the end of the road. I need to gain more and more and more. So it's a continuous process,
Right.
and keep learning. There's no stop to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a black hole. You keep learning, and it keeps coming. So and the third thing
Right.
is, I think, try to identify your own strengths and passions. I think that's kind of important thing, because it's kind of easy that you can see a person next to you or your upper class or whatever, from somewhere. And maybe that person is very skilled, maybe has a strength in doing something and he's successful. Maybe you think, oh, I want to be like him. But okay, that's a good ambition. But the question is, okay, I think everybody can do everything. I believe in that truly. But then are you willing to spend the time to gain those skills and to be like him, or it doesn't need to be like equal to him, but like similar to him.
Right.
For some people with different strengths, it might be very difficult. Maybe that person is more skilled and maybe more easy to direct into a different field. So maybe knowing your own strengths might help you to position yourself with respect to that. That's an important thing because, well, somebody is a math genius, and if you want to be like him, I know that I'm okay in math, but I'm not a math genius. So if that was my ambition, I would be a little bit miserable. I know that because I don't really that enjoy doing that stuff. So I know that. So it wouldn't be a good role model for me to take that person, for example.
Right.
So I think aligning your own strengths and your ambition will be kind of my third suggestion, I guess.
Third advice. Okay, all three very, very sound advices. Thank you very much, and I hope the listeners are gonna take them seriously, and because I think these are the things which are in the air, but not a lot of people speak about. Everything, all the three things that you spoke about. So thank you very much for that. Burak, I hope your research experience so far has been wonderful and will continue to be wonderful in the future as well. However, if you have three wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Three wishes, like a research genie comes to me and
yes.
Okay, genie,
What
my
do you
first wish,
want?
my first
Coffee
wish
machine.
is funding. Like, give me funding.
Of course. I saw that
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah. Give me all the money you have.
Right.
Because yeah, especially I think all research, everything goes with funding, but especially in our field, experimental research, like everything is expensive, right? Like even if you want to buy very tiny equipment, but if it's scientific equipment, then it's like double or triple the price.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And even small things like a Falcon tube or whatever, like it starts adding a lot of costs, and without funding, things are really hard to do to compete with people who are at the cutting edge.
Right.
Therefore, like in here at Synchrotron, we have internal funding to make our Synchrotron labs better, but not so much funding for our own personal research. Like if I want to do particular this material, this experiment, then it's more challenging. But if I want to develop the beamline better, then yes, there is more funding within the synchrotron. The second, so you asked for three.
Three. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, the second one, I don't know. I'm now too crazy. My mind is too crazy about ideas, so I cannot pick one. But maybe
fine.
one of them. Yeah, one of them is. I think. Okay, I really like Google. I'm like I spend a lot of my time on Google searching for keywords, papers, and stuff. But I feel that thing is becoming a bit cluttered at some point. Like, okay, maybe it's related to more philosophical because today's society is producing crazy information, not crazy amount of information. It's like everybody's talking about big data and so on and so forth.
Right.
And like every second, maybe hundreds of papers are getting published. So it's impossible to follow research properly as you could do back in 60s, 70s, where you get your own papers in print from the publisher, mailed to you every month or something. And yeah, now there are like hundreds of journals. Okay, maybe not every place has the same quality and so on and so forth, but I wish maybe there is a way to sort and what is that word in English?
Access
like
to information, or like
access the information and maybe sort the information better, target to your.
structure it in a nicer way, structure it in a more accessible and a quicker way that you can quickly get an overview. Okay, how do I synthesize cadmium selenide
Exactly.
nanomaterials,
Like,
for
yeah, you
example?
type, for example, whatever, like expansion coefficient of this. Okay, you end up like papers from 90s or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
then, oh, do I trust this paper, or like there's no like good source of. Yeah, it becomes challenging if you're really looking for something niche, and
Right. Yeah.
that sometimes is a lot of time lose. Like,
Hmm.
it's something simple, but maybe you just spend 30 minutes or more, or maybe, yeah, just searching for it. I wish
Right.
maybe there's some special thing like a Pokédex in Pokemon, like you just type it and like whatever it is and just gives you the
Just
details.
ask Alexa or your Google Home. Okay, Alexa, what is the expansion coefficient of XYZ? And then you just get the
Yeah,
answer right away, the
yeah,
value. Yeah.
they're
That was
good.
cool.
They're coming up, but yeah, like I sometimes ask my Google, like, okay, Google, sing me a song or whatever. Like, they're pretty bad. Like,
Right.
still their
Sure. So
voice
easy
recognition is
access to,
developing. Yeah.
right, easy access,
I think so. Yeah,
just
something
more
like that.
sorted information. That would be your second. What's the third wish?
Maybe it might be related to our current world, like where we are just coming out of the pandemic. Maybe more easier connection among scientists, people. Okay, pandemic affected everybody in the world pretty much, not
Mm-hmm.
just scientists. So, but from my perspective, like being back to conferences, talking to people, because like you can read papers, you can do other things, but maybe sometimes just talking to a person or just listening to his talk or her talk might give you a flash of inspiration because of
Right.
what she or he said, or like how he draw or explain something, rather than
Right.
just looking at more uh, inanimate objects like papers or whatever. Like
Mm-hmm.
biological things are more inspiring than
That makes sense.
non-biological things. Yeah.
That makes sense. All three very valid wishes, and I'm especially curious about, or especially intrigued by the second one that you mentioned. But yeah, this has been wonderful, Burak. Thank you very much for speaking with us. One last thing I wanted to ask you. I can't let you go without asking about your experiences or your learnings from the pandemic, which started
Yeah.
in 2020, or which came to the Western world in 2020, apparently. So, what are your learnings from the year 2020?
So it means the world is crazy and crazy things can happen at any time.
Yes, that
Expect
is correct.
anything at any time.
Right.
So I think if it was a Hollywood movie, I would go and watch it and say, okay, it's pretty cool. Have you watched this movie? Like the whole world's facing a pandemic and everybody's cannot go work and do. And very
Mm.
nice plot. I like the movie, like, but it happened in reality, right? So
Yeah.
it was real, and
Hmm.
everybody I think went through differently.
Hmm.
Some people maybe hated it because they lost a lot of connections, they lost people. It was very sad.
Hmm.
Maybe it was okay for some other people. Maybe
Hmm.
more introvert people, they already didn't need too much connection or something, or
Right.
they were already loaded up with too much input from outside world. Maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, it was an interesting, I think, in the history books coming up in the next 50 years or so, I think we will hear, or there will be more interesting outcomes of this thing. Because it was like an experiment, right? The whole world pretty
It's
much
a social experiment.
social
That's what it
experiment.
is. Yeah,
And I sometimes
absolutely.
think, was it intentional or not?
No, don't feed into the conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
please note. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, anything can happen at any moment, and it's important to be prepared. And so
You cannot prepare, but yeah, just being in that mindset, maybe. Yeah, that can happen for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just go with it.
Yeah, just go with it.
And just be safe. That's
Yeah.
important. So, Burak, thank you very much for speaking with us. This has been lovely, and very, very much looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano Twitter account. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pranoti, for this opportunity and for organizing this very cool stuff. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website realscientistsnano.org and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.